I wasn't looking for anything. That's what I kept telling myself. It was the morning of December 30th, just after 7, and the house was quiet, still blanketed in that winter hush you only get the week after Christmas. The tree was still up in the living room, lights unplugged, ornaments half-hanging where Caitlin's nieces had helped decorate. I had woken up early to make coffee, out of habit more than energy. The floor was cold, the sky was gray, and I wanted to delay getting dressed for as long as possible. Caitlin's phone was sitting on her side of the bed, face down, charger coiled next to it like a snake that had given up. I picked it up, not thinking much of it. Her battery was nearly dead, and we'd both had phones die mid-text or call more times than I could count. She was still in the shower, and I figured she'd appreciate the gesture. It's the kind of thing you do after years of marriage without thinking. You see something unplugged and plug it in. You see something broken and try to fix it. But as I plugged it in and watched the screen flicker on, something froze in me, because it rang, and the name on the caller ID, Betty IRS, lit up in bold. Now, I'm not the guy who checks his wife's phone. I don't go through her messages, I don't scroll through her social media when she's asleep, and I've never planted any tracking apps. I've always believed that if you're in a marriage where you feel the need to spy, you've already lost. But the number stopped me. It wasn't just any number. It was familiar, and not in the vague way you remember an old contact or distant cousin. This number had shown up 3 months ago, buried in our bank statement, listed as a Venmo memo from Caitlin's account. Consulting services. It wasn't huge, like $80 I think, but it was one of a few small transactions that didn't sit right with me. I asked about them. She said it was a tax-related expense for her bakery, that they were going through restructuring, and she needed a financial advisor. When I pressed a little, she rolled her eyes and made a joke about me, not trusting a woman to run her own business. I let it go, or at least I thought I had, because seeing the name, Betty, IRS, pop up now made something shift in me. Something I didn't like. The ringtone buzzed once more before stopping. Missed call. I set the phone down on the nightstand, more careful this time. My hand was already starting to clench without me realizing. Maybe it was the cold. Maybe it was something else. My eyes didn't leave the number, still fresh on the screen. I stood there a second longer, trying to decide if I should mention it or pretend I hadn't seen it. That's when I heard the water shut off in the bathroom. The door cracked open, steam billowing out like a slow-moving ghost. Caitlin stepped into the bedroom wrapped in a towel, her wet hair clinging to her shoulders, makeup half done, eyes focused on the mirror before they glanced at me. Then she saw the phone in my hand. "Oh," she said casually, like she just remembered something minor. "That's probably Betty, from the IRS." I didn't say anything, just gave her a look. One of those looks that asks questions without making sound. She took the phone from me, wiped her hand on her towel before unlocking it. "Yeah," she said, scrolling through something. "She's helping me with tax stuff, bakery stuff." Her tone was breezy, but too breezy, like she'd already practiced saying it. She wasn't defensive. She was calm. Too calm. "I told you about her, didn't I?" she added, not looking up. "She's the one who helped me set up the quarterly withholding. You remember that drama with the sales tax thing back in October?" I nodded slowly. I didn't remember any specific drama, but she said it like I should, like it was something we'd already resolved. Maybe it was. Then, without warning, she laughed. A short, breathy sound that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Mark," she said, placing a hand on my chest, teasing. "You're doing that face again, the suspicious one. You're so cute when you act like everything is a conspiracy." "I'm not," I started, but she cut me off with a grin. "You are. You're totally doing your someone's hiding something face. Babe, relax. It's a tax lady. From the government. I think if I were hiding something, I'd pick a better name than Betty from the IRS." She was joking, playing it off. But there was something off about the way she did it. Not wrong, just too polished. Like an actor reciting lines in a play they'd already performed 10 times. "I'm not accusing you of anything," I said flatly, though even as I said it, I knew my voice didn't sound convincing. She tilted her head, gave me a look that used to melt me. It didn't this time. "Come on, Mark," she said, backing toward the dresser, still scrolling through her phone. "Don't be weird. It's early, and you haven't had your coffee yet. You always go full CIA when you haven't slept." I tried to laugh. Came out more like a breath through my nose. I sat on the edge of the bed, trying not to let the weight in my chest grow. Caitlin disappeared into the closet. I could hear hangers sliding, drawers opening. The sound of perfume spritzing. Sharp, floral, too strong for a Thursday morning. That was new too. A minute later, she reappeared. Now in a light green blouse I hadn't seen before, dark jeans and heels. "Heels for the bakery?" I said nothing. She leaned over to kiss my cheek before grabbing her purse. "Don't forget your coffee," she said, halfway out the door. "And stop looking at my phone like it owes you an explanation. You're turning into your dad." I didn't laugh at that either. When the door clicked shut behind her, I sat there in silence for a long time. The phone still buzzed once in a while. Notifications, texts, missed calls. All normal, all meaningless. And yet, I couldn't stop thinking about that number. It shouldn't have meant anything, but it did. Because sometimes it's not what's said. It's how it's said. It's the pause before the answer. The laugh that comes too quickly. The perfume that isn't yours. The blouse that's too new. The tone that's too smooth. And the feeling you can't explain but can't ignore. For the first time in our marriage, and I mean really the first time, I realized I didn't trust what I'd just been told. I sat on the edge of our bed, my hands resting on my knees. They were clenched tight, too tight. I looked down and saw my knuckles were white. There's a difference between a gut feeling and paranoia. One comes from something deep and ancient, a survival instinct you can't quite trace. The other is fear dressed up like logic. For most of our marriage, I convinced myself I was the paranoid type, the overthinker, the one who needed things explained twice, then double-checked. I've never been spontaneous, never been reckless. I make lists. I research before I act. I once spent 3 days comparing reviews before buying a dishwasher. Caitlin always said it was one of the reasons she loved me, that I was careful. So that night, while she was still out at the bakery, I sat alone on the couch, in the dark, the TV playing something I wasn't watching, and tried to tell myself this was nothing. Just a weird morning. Just a phone call with bad timing. But the lie didn't stick. Because I'd been keeping score. Not on purpose, not consciously. But my brain had been filing things away, like puzzle pieces I hadn't realized I was collecting. 3 months ago, she started coming home later. First, it made sense. The bakery had launched 2 new seasonal lines, and December was their busiest season. Caitlin said she'd been working with a new supplier, experimenting with vegan options. I remember being proud of her, proud of how driven she was, how invested in her craft. But somewhere in the last 8 weeks, she'd stopped asking me how my day was. That used to be our thing. I'd come home from the office, tired, stressed, half burned out from project meetings, and she'd greet me with a warm, "Tell me everything." I'd talk, she'd listen. And then she'd talk and I'd listen. That's how we stayed connected. That's how we kept the noise out. Now she just said, "Hey," when I walked in. Sometimes not even that. She used to light a candle in the kitchen after baking, something vanilla or cinnamon. Now she burned some cologne-like scent that made me sneeze. The same scent she once said, smelled like a guy who didn't know what restraint was. And now, it was everywhere, in her scarves, in her hair. Last week, she bought a new pair of boots. I asked about them, half curious, half joking, and she said she got them on sale. "Insane discount," she claimed. But the box had a handwritten note inside. "Hope these fit. You always look good in black." No name. No receipt. I didn't bring it up. I don't know why. Maybe I didn't want to hear her lie to me. Or maybe I was scared she'd tell the truth. That's the thing they don't tell you about trust. It's not always shattered in one dramatic explosion. Sometimes it leaks, a little at a time. Slow, silent, steady. Until one day you look around and realize the foundation is soaked. and you're ankle-deep in water. Around 9:40 p.m., I texted her, "Everything okay?" A minute later, she replied, "Yeah, just finishing cleanup. We'll probably leave soon." No punctuation, no pet names, no emojis. Caitlin was the emoji queen. Always had to drop a smiley or a wink, like she was afraid text without it would feel cold. But lately, her messages felt like they were written by someone else, or written for someone else. I set the phone down, got up, walked to the window. No snow tonight, just wind. The streets looked half dead, like the neighborhood was holding its breath. My reflection in the glass looked tired, older. My beard had more gray in it than I remembered. I thought back to when we first met in college during a group project. I was the serious one. She was chaos in a hoodie. She wore mismatched socks on purpose. Couldn't sit still. Smelled like coffee and acrylic paint. And I fell in love with her before I even understood what she was saying in that first meeting. She made me feel alive. Lately, I wasn't sure I made her feel anything. The door opened around 11:15. She came in with a paper bag in hand, hair pulled back, cheeks slightly flushed. She looked alive, energized, like she'd just come from a party, not from mopping bakery floors. "Hey," she said, tossing her keys into the bowl. "Hey," I replied from the couch. She didn't kiss me, just walked to the kitchen. I brought home one of the new sugar-free almond loaves. "Wanna try?" "Maybe later," I said. She shrugged, set the bag on the counter, and went upstairs to shower. A few minutes later, I heard her laughing on the phone. Not a customer call, not a work emergency. It was soft, personal, familiar. I crept to the stairs and sat on the bottom step. I could hear her pacing in the bedroom above. Then I heard her say, "You're bad," followed by more laughter. The shower started 2 minutes later. I went back to the kitchen. Her phone wasn't there. She had it with her, always with her. She used to leave it on the counter while we cooked together, back when cooking together was something we did. Now, if I came into the room, she tilted the screen away from me. I opened the laptop sitting on the dining table, a new one. She claimed she needed it for bookkeeping. But this one wasn't synced with our shared cloud. The login screen asked for a password. I guessed her birthday. Denied. I guessed our anniversary. Denied. I closed the lid and sat back, hands pressed against my temples. I wasn't the jealous type. I've never been controlling. But this didn't feel like jealousy. It felt like being locked out of my own life. When she came downstairs in her robe, hair damp, skin glowing, she leaned over the couch and kissed my forehead. "Gonna turn in early," she said. "Tomorrow's inventory day." I nodded. "Okay, night." She disappeared up the stairs like smoke. And I sat there on the same couch we'd picked out 3 years ago during that Labor Day sale, wondering how it was possible to feel so alone in a house you own with someone. The TV kept playing. I wasn't watching, just listening. Listening for something to prove I wasn't crazy. There's something sacred about New Year's Eve. Not the champagne or the fireworks or the kiss at midnight thing. That's the surface stuff. What really gets to people is the promise. The illusion that when the clock resets, you do too. Like you get a clean slate just because a calendar says so. I used to believe that. This year, I lit the fireworks by myself. Our backyard was quiet except for the occasional distant pop from the neighbor's party 2 doors down. I'd bought the fireworks earlier that day, hoping it might shake something loose between Caitlin and me. Maybe remind us of who we used to be, of how we used to sit out here wrapped in a blanket, sipping cider and planning next year's resolutions like we actually had control over anything. But tonight, she didn't come outside with me. Said she was tired. Said she had a headache. So I stood alone in the cold, holding a lighter, counting down the minutes to midnight with nobody to count with. I lit one rocket and watched it climb into the sky, fizzling gold against the dark. I didn't cheer. I didn't smile. I just stood there, thinking about how long she'd been disappearing before she actually disappeared. That was when I noticed it, the faintest light, glowing from the room we never used. The guest room near the garage. We always kept the door closed to save heat. Nothing important ever happened in there, or so I thought. But tonight the light was on, and there were voices inside. I stepped quietly across the backyard, circled to the side entrance, and walked into the house through the mudroom. The laundry machine hummed softly, covering the sound of my footsteps. My heart wasn't racing. It was slow, too slow, like it was bracing for impact before it even hit. The hallway light was off, but the door to the guest room was cracked open an inch, just enough to see inside without being seen. What I saw will never leave me. Caitlin was sitting on someone's lap. And that someone was Justin. I hadn't seen him in months. Not since that weird barbecue she insisted on hosting for her consulting contacts. She said he was helping her with some back-end IRS paperwork, which made no sense to me then and made less sense now. They weren't even trying to hide. She was laughing, head tilted back, hands in his hair, while he whispered something into her neck. They looked comfortable, like this wasn't new, like this was routine. I couldn't move. The room was warm, lit by the glow of the laptop on the desk beside them. I could see the screen from the hallway. It wasn't spreadsheets. It wasn't tax documents. It was a file, a folder actually, labeled Future Co. IP transfer drafts. I stepped closer, barely breathing. The voices grew clearer. "We'll use his LLC name until the transition is complete," Justin was saying. "That way it's clean. No red flags. After the divorce, you'll inherit his share through default settlement if he doesn't contest." "He won't," Caitlin replied, brushing something off his collar. "Mark doesn't like conflict. He shuts down when things get messy." They both laughed. She leaned forward to click something on the screen. "We should file on a Tuesday. Less court traffic." My cousin said that's how she got her expedited. "Smart," Justin said, squeezing her waist. "You always were." I took a photo of the laptop, of them. Then I took another, and another. My hands were steady. Too steady. I don't know how. Maybe it's shock. Maybe it's clarity. I backed away from the door before they noticed. Walked quietly down the hall, phone still glowing in my palm. I didn't stop walking until I was back outside, where the wind slapped me in the face and reminded me I was still in my own body. Inside, the countdown had started. 10, 9, 8. The neighborhood erupted with noise. Sparklers, firecrackers, laughter. 7, 6. I lit another rocket. 5, 4, 3. Caitlin's laugh echoed faintly behind the closed window, like something out of a movie I never agreed to watch. 2, 1. I looked up as the firework exploded. And just like that, the new year began. But I already knew we wouldn't survive it. I didn't sleep, not even for a second. When Caitlin finally came to bed, around 2:15 a.m., I was already lying there, pretending to be asleep, one arm over my eyes, breath slow, steady. She smelled like wine and that same unfamiliar cologne I'd noticed weeks ago. Her movements were quiet but not careful. No apology in the way she slipped under the blanket. No guilt in the way she exhaled like she'd had a long day. She didn't say a word, and neither did I, but I wasn't lying there in pain. Not anymore. The sting had settled into something colder, clearer. I'd seen everything I needed to see. I had proof, not just of her affair, but of their plan to dismantle everything I'd spent the last 6 years building. The business. My name. My ideas. She thought I wouldn't fight back. She thought I'd fall apart quietly. She didn't know me as well as she thought. By morning, I was up before the sun. Coffee brewed slowly in the kitchen as the house sat in perfect silence. Caitlin was still asleep, one leg draped across my side of the bed like a victory flag. She had no idea she was already losing. I pulled out my laptop, inserted the memory card from my phone, and began sorting the photos. First, the screenshot *TS of the laptop, the open folder labeled Future Co., the draft documents, the email between her and Justin discussing IP leverage, and, of course, the timeline for the divorce filing. She had it mapped out like a project launch. She underestimated the wrong man. For the first time in weeks, I felt awake. I had a plan. Started with 3 things: assets, access, and leverage. First, I logged into our shared business software. As co-owner, Caitlin had access to high-level administrative permissions, access I'd been too trusting to monitor. I revoked it, quietly. No alerts, no notifications. I simply created a new administrator account tied to a backup email I'd set up for emergencies. I began exporting everything of value: client contacts, licensing agreements, prototype files. I also flagged certain folders with invisible trace logs, the kind that would notify me if someone opened, downloaded, or copied anything from them in the future. Digital tripwires. Then I backed up our private cloud server, especially the assets registered under my name. Design specs, trademark paperwork, anything I had created with my own hands and mind. I organized them into a locked archive and uploaded it to an encrypted drive. Next came the finances. I logged into our banking system, the joint business account, the personal savings, the credit cards. Nothing had been withdrawn yet, which meant I was still ahead. Years ago, on a quiet afternoon in March, I sat down with a lawyer and created a trust. I'd read a blog post about how entrepreneurs should protect their intellectual property and real estate before success attracted sharks. It had seemed paranoid at the time. Now it felt like prophecy. I transferred the deed of our home to the trust. Not in a panic, just a calm, lawful action, fully within my rights as the original purchaser and managing partner of our real estate portfolio. The trust was irrevocable, airtight. Once it was done, not even Caitlin could touch it without triggering a very public legal dispute. She had no idea that the roof over her head had just become untouchable. Then I changed every password I owned: banking, email, utilities, even the grocery delivery app. Anything she might try to exploit. I logged out of all shared devices, deauthorized her phone, and left nothing behind but a polite default login that would show her nothing but blank dashboards and expired sessions. All of this took under 2 hours. By 9 a.m., I had the house, the business files, the assets, and the evidence. She still had the illusion of control. And that was exactly what I wanted. Around 9:30, Caitlin shuffled into the kitchen in slippers and a hoodie, yawning like she'd just come back from a soul-cleansing vacation. She smiled faintly when she saw me sitting at the table. "Morning," she said. I looked up, smiled back. "Morning." She poured herself coffee. No sugar, no milk. She didn't ask about my night. Didn't ask about the fireworks. She just stood there, sipping slowly, checking her phone. I waited for her to say something. Maybe a "sorry I missed the countdown." Maybe a "next year will be better." But she said nothing. Good. The less she said now, the more stunned she'd be later. "You know," I said casually, stirring my coffee, "I was thinking we should take a trip." She blinked, looking up from her screen. "A trip?" "Yeah," I said, like a reset. "Just the two of us. Someplace quiet. Disconnect for a bit. Clear the air." Her expression softened, just slightly. I could see the calculations behind her eyes. She was trying to gauge what I knew. If I knew anything at all. "That actually sounds nice," she said carefully. "Like, really nice." I nodded, still smiling. "Good. Maybe the mountains. Or the lake house." I watched her shoulders ease. "I'll start looking at places," she said, and kissed the top of my head before going back upstairs. As soon as she was out of sight, I turned back to my screen. I wasn't booking a trip. I was buying time. Time to finish setting up the final piece. Legal protection. I forwarded all the files, **TS, and images to my attorney's secure inbox. A friend I trusted, someone I'd gone to school with. He'd helped with the trust setup and had always warned me about contingencies. I asked him to review everything and prepare preemptive filings in case Caitlin tried to make a move. I didn't need revenge. Not yet. I needed insulation. That afternoon, while Caitlin ran errands, I watched her phone's location bounce around. She wasn't going to the bakery. She wasn't going to the supplier. She was at Justin's apartment. I didn't confront her. Instead, I spent the next 4 hours creating false financial spreadsheets, believable, but padded with fictitious losses and exaggerated debts. I designed a complete digital paper trail of a business bleeding cash and desperate for capital, complete with canceled client contracts and a tanking quarterly forecast. When she asked about it later, and I knew she would, I'd show her those numbers. Let her think she was about to inherit a sinking ship. Let her take her next steps with false confidence. She'd already betrayed me in the shadows. Now it was my turn, in the light. The first time Caitlin cried in front of me after the new year, I didn't believe a word of it. It happened on January 2nd. She stood in the kitchen holding the mail, a stack of bank notices and business catalogs I had intercepted from the mailbox minutes earlier, sorting out anything that could tip her off. She held a letter from our payment processor in her hand, one-eyed replaced with a carefully doctored version. This says the bakery's account was flagged for inconsistencies, she said, voice wobbling. Did you know about this? I looked at her and tilted my head, like I was just as surprised. No, I said. Maybe it's because of the chargebacks from that coupon program you ran. Her eyes narrowed just slightly. She was trying to read me, but I'd been rehearsing this scene in my head since the moment I saw her on Justin's lap. She sat down, folding her arms tight across her chest. This isn't good, she muttered, more to herself than to me. I didn't respond. Instead, I handed her the fake spreadsheet I had been working on that morning. It showed a collapsing margin line, overestimated debt, and a projected quarterly loss that made it seem like the bakery wouldn't survive spring. I've been crunching numbers, I said, sighing. It's bad, Kate. I don't know if we're going to make it. For a moment, she was silent. Then, like a switch, she softened. She touched my hand gently. We'll figure it out, she said. Her eyes were glassy, but not from pain. From calculation. She thought I didn't know. She thought I was unraveling. She thought she was winning. And that was exactly where I needed her. Over the next 3 days, I shifted roles. From husband to observer. From partner to ghost. I acted tired, distracted, broken. I asked her things like, do you think we should take out a line of credit? I pretended to forget to cancel a subscription. I said I'd meet a client for lunch, then sat in a coffee shop 2 blocks from Justin's building, watching their Uber history update in real time. She told me she was at the bakery, but the location pinged near a rooftop bar in the city. I didn't follow. Not this time. I was too busy building something else, her digital footprint. I had installed a monitoring agent on her laptop during one of her errand runs. It wasn't spyware, at least not the scary kind. It was more like a health check, pulse monitor. Every click, every login attempt, every document she opened, all quietly logged to a dashboard on my tablet. She had no clue. When she opened a file titled Separation Budget _V3, I got a ping. When she accessed the folder labeled IP Draft Final, I got a screensh *T. When she opened our prenup, I got the timestamp. She was moving forward, with or without me. But here's the part that still gets me. She was smiling more. To anyone else, she probably looked like a woman reclaiming her spark. Her outfits got bolder. She started using words like vision board again. There were fresh flowers on the kitchen table every morning, which she claimed were extras from the bakery, but always came in wrapping I didn't recognize. She didn't know I'd seen the receipts forwarded to Justin's email. She was testing how much I'd take before breaking. But I didn't break. I adapted. I watched her like a surgeon watches vitals during a procedure. Calm, precise, detached. Every move she made gave me more data. Every document she opened, every email she replied to, every WhatsApp message to Betty, IRS, was a breadcrumb. I followed them all. On the 3rd night, she cooked dinner. She hadn't done that in weeks. I thought we could have a reset night, she said. You know, us time. She made pasta, played our wedding playlist on Spotify, wore a blouse I hadn't seen since our anniversary trip 2 years ago. I knew what she was doing. She wanted me pliable, trusting, vulnerable. I played my part. Halfway through the meal, she looked up from her wine and said, I've been thinking. About what? I asked. About how maybe we need to simplify. The bakery's been so stressful. And I know your business is struggling. I let her believe that. So I was wondering, she trailed off, twisting her fork. Would you ever consider selling the company? Or maybe transferring part of it to someone with a little more financial experience? There it was. The bait. I chewed my food slowly, then shrugged. Maybe, I said. I don't know. I'm tired, Kate. I just want peace. She reached across the table and touched my hand. I want that too, but I could see it in her eyes. She wasn't talking about peace. She was talking about ownership. That night, while she slept, I reviewed the tracking logs. In the past 24 hours, she'd uploaded a draft of the divorce filing to a shared Google Drive, downloaded all copies of our joint business valuation reports, and outlining talking points for a cooperative separation, sent a message to Justin that read, if he signs off before Q2, we can still file under the original LLC and avoid the clawbacks. All we need is his signature. She was planning to strip me clean without ever raising her voice. No confrontation, no mess, just a quiet bleed out. But she forgot something fundamental about me. I don't lose sleep when someone plays dirty. I don't rage. I don't beg. I build. By the 5th morning, I had everything I needed. The recordings, the email logs, the fake documents she'd accessed, proving she acted on fraudulent assumptions, the screen captures of her acknowledging the misuse of our operating agreement, Justin's role as a silent partner, despite his lack of disclosure, and the final piece, a notarized document from our original attorney stating that all original IP created prior to 2021 was mine exclusively. She hadn't read that clause, but the courts would. You seem different, she said the next night. We were sitting on the couch. Her feet were in my lap. A movie was playing. Something forgettable. I think I'm just tired, I said. She leaned her head on my shoulder. I missed this, she whispered. I nodded. Me too. Then I whispered something back. Not much longer now. She smiled, thinking I meant something else. And I smiled too because I didn't. Justin showed up at my office pretending to pitch a partnership. He had no idea he was walking into an ambush. Security met him in the lobby with a letter, notarized, formal, and devastating. It outlined his role in attempted IP theft and included documentation of every login, every plan, every forged detail. Within 24 hours, Caitlin's access to all company files was revoked. Her name scrubbed from ownership records. The house? Untouchable. The bakery's assets? Frozen. I didn't scream. I didn't gloat. I simply handed the evidence to my attorney, who forwarded it to the district attorney's office. If they thought I'd roll over, they picked the wrong man. She returned a week later, never stepping out of the car. I watched from the porch as the movers loaded her boxes. Clothes, books, 2 photo albums. Before leaving, she told me to check the glove box. Inside was a check for the money I'd lent her, a screensh *T of her mocking my morning routine, and a note. You were right. I didn't see it coming. Closed it. Locked the front door. For the first time in months, the silence felt like peace.